Hello everyone, and thanks for coming back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the Can-Am Formula One series. This is the 4-inch edition. In this video we'll be taking a look at flights from two different motors on this frame. The first flight is the Emax RS1606 3300 kV. The second flight is going to be a crashed out flight. It's on the NEN 1404 3750 kV motors. In the first flight, I'm using the Emax Avant 4-inch tri-blade props, and in the second flight, I'm using the HQ bi-blade 4-inch props. The camera I selected to use is the Foxeer Razor. The flight stack is the iFlight 6X Mini F7 Twin G, which has a 35 amp 4-in-1 ESC, the F7 flight controller with an OSD. The VTX is power switchable from 25 milliwatts all the way up to 500 milliwatts. The flight stack comes with a 35 volt 220 microfarad capacitor. I also use the new Emax antenna. The arms are 5mm thick. The top base plate looks like it's 2mm thick. The bottom plate looks like it's 2mm thick too. The canopy carbon is also 2mm thick. With the Emax 1606 3300 kV motors and those tri-blade props, it weighs 167 grams. With the Emax 4S 850 milliamp battery, it weighs 263 grams. With the Flywoo NEN and bi-blade props, it weighs 144.5 grams. With the same 4S battery, it weighs 241 grams. You might be curious about why I chose to weigh the 1606 version with the Emax battery, and that's because that's the lightest 850 milliamp 4S battery that I have. It actually comes in 3 grams lighter than the RDQ or the G&B. RDQ and G&B are the same batteries. There's a little bit of an inconsistency when it comes to weight between the two, but it's very, very minor. It's less than a gram, so you won't find a big difference between RDQ and G&B batteries in general. It has already been confirmed by Tyler Brennan, the owner of RDQ, that they have G&B making their batteries. So it makes a lot of sense that those batteries would come in at nearly the same weight, but the Emax battery is 3 grams less. And I was shooting for a 1606 or something that could spin a 4-inch tri-blade that would come in under that 250 gram limit. And I just think that we have to do things like we're going to need to take the TPU canopy off, and that was going to save us some weight. And we're going to have to find a lighter prop. If we can find a prop that weighs about 3/4 of a gram to a gram less per prop, then I think with those two things, that would get us in this configuration down below that 250 gram limit. But I also went a little bit further, and then we have the secondary set of motors, which gets us under that 250 gram limit. And you can see in this, I'm going pretty, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm going pretty hard on this. So you're going to see the low battery warning come up, and I'm just kind of getting after it. This is actually quite a while ago. I think the Can-Am guys sent me this frame 3 months ago, and they've been very patient with me. Of course, I had to acquire all the parts. Something that I almost never do. I think maybe I've done it twice, maybe 3 times with conversion type of frames, is I generally go out and buy new components so that I have more experience with components. So when people come and ask me questions about, is this any good? I can give them some sort of basis rather than going by the paper specs. I've actually used it at least once. Sometimes I'll buy components that I've used before again, just so I get a basis for the quality control. That's something that we're always worried about. And one thing about this flight stack that I'm not crazy about is the VTX performance. And as I'm not very far away, and I am flying it on 500 milliwatts, and it's just not very good. I have not been impressed with iFlight VTXs. Maybe they're very robust. Maybe they do great at range with big obstacles like abandoned buildings or something. But in my space, I just haven't been all that keen on the iFlight VTXs. I think the flight controller and the ESC seem to work fine, but it's just the VTX for me. It doesn't work great. I am running Betaflight 411 on this. Probably Betaflight 4.1 on this particular flight, 4.11 on the flight that we're going to see. It's actually a crashed out flight. Don't worry about the crashed out flight. I've actually got another flight that I'll show you in a picture back at the desk. That is much longer. Okay, this is going to be very short. It's going to be less than a minute, but I wanted to show you this for 2 reasons. One, I seem to have lost a bunch of footage to where I don't have audio for a bunch of the flights that I took for this. And the second one is this crash gives us a little bit of proof of concept. This does have very thick arms, but they are very skinny as well. And when we get back to the desk, I'll highlight something about those skinny arms. So I think this will help you because I feel this is a direct competitor to the Baby Hawk 4 or the Sport 4. I can't remember what they call that now. I reviewed that on the channel, but it's the Emax version, and it actually came in at about the same weight as well. But I broke an arm with that, and many of you that saw that video made the note that it wasn't that hard of a crash. Now, in this particular case with the crash, it's just going to come up here in a moment. I think this is a pretty hard crash, and I have audio for it, so that helps us kind of, oh, there it is. The quad was fine after this, but unfortunately, I didn't have any more batteries. So I'm going to play that much longer flight with these motors and an 850 milliamp battery like the Emax one. I've also got the RDQ one out here. This one is 3 grams heavier than this one, although they're really, really close in size. But I only have 2 of these batteries, but I've got 4 of these batteries. And that particular flight did come on the Emax. I just happened to remember that because it wasn't that long ago. And the reason why I'm posting this is I have had it so long, and just today we had some strong winter weather, and in my area, when winter does come, it can stick and stay. So I don't know how much more outside flight I'm going to get. I've done a host since I got back from vacation, but I don't think it's fair to continue to hold on to this. You guys need to be able to see it. Some of you live in warm places and might be making decisions about 4-inch frames. This does come in other versions as well. Head on over to Can-Am Multi-Rotors. You can find a couple of different versions of this that come in different lengths. So if you want a 3-inch version or a 2.5-inch version, they actually have other frames as well. And you may have noticed, I didn't quite call it out in that flight footage, that you can see these depending upon your camera angle. You know, I've got my camera angle cranked up there quite a bit, and you can see the very top of those in the footage. So if you missed that and you want to see it, you need to go back to the flight footage to see that. But it does give you good camera protection when it comes to that straight on. But the flight with these batteries does run about 5 minutes on these. A matter of fact, if you look closely at the end of the flight in the picture-in-picture, you'll find I think it goes to 5 minutes and 12 seconds. It's not my best flight by any stretch, and I didn't have any audio for it because it came shortly after I was pretty happy with the tune on it. And then the flight footage that I did show you that had audio, it was an exceptionally windy day. So that gives you another data point to see how something like this handles really high winds. Well, I say really high winds. We had gusts over 30 miles an hour, but the weather report was actually 23. It was just this week, so I happen to remember. We had a number of good days that I could have flown this out there, but I had really low wind, so I chose to fly some smaller quads on those really low wind days. It's one of the things I have to do in managing our weather and my flights and what I'm flying. But I wanted to point out something that they've done that's different that I haven't seen before, is the arms are bigger and thicker up here. You should probably be able to tell that. Maybe you can tell better on a rear arm that they're thicker up here, and then they get thinner right here. And if you see this thin area, that's right where the prop is. Now, I don't know if they designed this around the basis of the prop line, or if they found that if they had this same thickness down here, if this became the break point. Obviously, I didn't break it, and I had a lot of crashes, especially on that really windy day. I had all sorts of crashes. Most of them were tumbles, not nearly as dramatic as that 50-second flight I showed you, but it is much thicker here than it is down here. Also note that they have flush-mounted screws down here, so if you wanted to use real low UMA grip, like I've got on here, you can see some of it tore off in that crash. You can do that. You also see that we have holes in the plate, and that's so you can access your flight stack, and you can manipulate that as you're managing things there. On that crash, I also broke my zip tie for my antenna, and my fancy Emax tape, it snapped as well. Here on the back, something I did that was probably unnecessary is I put a zip tie through this nice, neat little slot that we have right here in order to give my antenna just kind of a center place to rest, because otherwise I would have had to route it up here, and if you look through that hole, that's a pretty sharp right angle down there to the connector, and I wanted to give it a little bit of a less sharp angle, so I decided to do this. This probably added a gram. Well, probably not a gram, probably half a gram or a little bit less than a half a gram. You could also save some weight by going to an RSXR. They are slightly less heavy. You can depin an RSXR, or take the connector off, not necessarily depin. Depin is one of the things that we'll say though from time to time, and then that will save a tiny bit of weight there as well. One thing that they've done that we've seen it in other frames, but I need to call it out, is probably the big reason why this frame survived all my crashing is this front 2 plates in their design. Because things do stick out here, if you center a tree, like I said, you'll have good camera protection, but these actually hook So when you put these plates on, you have to put them on this way, and then they clip around the carbon in the back. So the force, whenever you hit here, some portion of it is going to get transferred into this bottom carbon plate, which is then secured your arms and then down to your bottom carbon plate. Now, one thing I would have liked to have seen, but unfortunately, you just can't do it. Maybe you can get a shot right through there. See, these are wishbone arms, so 2 arms for every piece. You can't toilet tank your battery unless you get a really long strap and you run the strap around the outside, and then you have the strap laying here. I don't like mounting my batteries that way. I never feel like I get them really, really secured. So that would be the only way you could toilet tank the battery, because you can't run the strap through there because of the wishbone style of the arms. They're connected underneath there. This iFlight stack does use pins. You can't see them. They're right down in there in that dark space that you're not able to see. I don't have enough light. It's actually hard to see. We even want to put a flashlight down there, but right kind of beyond where my finger is a connector for the flight controller to the ESC. There aren't pins when it comes to connecting the VTX. You can see that connector right back here. It goes from the flight controller up to the VTX. So no pins there, but pins down there. Some people really don't like that, and that's why I mentioned it. I have had troubles with the HGLRC stuff and their pins, but I've had a lot of crashes with this particular one, and I haven't had any troubles with it. So take that for a little bit of data if you are investigating this particular flight stack. I was surprised at the performance of these motors. You know, when you compare these motor sizes, I think when you just visually look at them, they don't look like they're, you know, that much difference. But when you have them in your hand, many of you have had these motors in your hand, it's pretty substantial, the size difference. And I really didn't think these Flywoo motors would be able to spin these 4-inch blades very well, but it did quite well. I was pretty happy with how it handled that. Mainly, maybe I was extra happy because I was so skeptical going into it. Also note on the bottom, I didn't call this out, we only have spots for 3 motor screws, so that's something to note there. The carbon does go all the way through, so various stem length that protrude from below the base of the motor will work out just fine. While we're looking here at the bottom, I also did secure my zip tie down this little spot right here. It seemed like a handy spot to put my zip tie and secure my battery lead. That way, if I had a battery ejection, that it wouldn't tear off my flight stack. In this particular frame series, they've got, as I mentioned, the 4-inch version, a 5-inch version, a 3-inch version that's called Power, a 3-inch version that's called Light, and a 2.5-inch version. They also have different colors of TPU that you can get, and the TPU print is nice, but when it comes to weight, if you're trying to get up to that 250 gram limit but stay below it, this is probably something you're going to have to ditch. They also have another canopy that has like a shark fin. I think they call that the arrow that sticks up here that helps for turtle mode. I know that racers like to have something big up there so they can turtle mode in their fields that they fly in. So if you're a racer and you're looking at 4-inchers, that might be something that you want to look at as well. I think another good motor option might be the Rotor Geeks 1500 series motors. I think if we drop just down to a 1500 series motor, we would get under that 250 gram limit. Of course, you know, these are pretty light 1600 series motors, and they do perform really well. I prefer these motors on that setup, but when it comes to that 250 grams, we either have to drop to buy blades on these or some different props that I don't have in order to get under that 250 gram limit. We'd also have to take off the canopy. We might be able to save a couple grams. I didn't mention it by switching out to a nano camera as well. That might save us about a gram, maybe a gram and a half there. Again, this frame is from Can-Am Rotors. That's can-am-rotors.com, and they have more than just this frame over there. If you're interested or you're shopping around for frames that are a little bit different, a little bit unique, you might go take a look, and I'll have a link down in the video description to their web shop so you can take a look for yourself. I'll also put these parts by chance if you wanted to investigate it, if you like the camera view, or if you think this flight stack is something you're interested in, or maybe the motors or the antenna or the props, what have you. If there's something here that draws your attention, I will have a complete build kit list down in the video description, and I'll put a total down there. I know that's something that a lot of people like to see is totals. I think this one cost about $200 to build. I'm seeing the price on the Formula One series. This version that I have here comes in at $34. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.